Is it on? Okay. Hi. This is obviously my first time on YouTube, and I thought it would, since this is Veterans Day, I would share a special story with you. So here it goes. Among other military positions, my dad proudly served as a medic in the U.S. Army during World War II and worked on search and rescue boats along the California coast. Every Memorial Day and Veterans Day, he would recite this story to me. It got to be a tradition where I would ask, "Okay, Dad, tell me the story again," and there he'd go. Since my dad has passed away in 1997, I try to every year at this time remember the story he so reverently told me. I may have missed a few words, but this is how I remembered it. In a small French town on October 23, 1921, a U.S. Army sergeant selected the body which was to become the unknown soldier. 4 bodies were transported from 4 different cemeteries located inside 4 different French battlegrounds. French and American officials entered a room where the 4 caskets were displayed, each draped with an American flag. The officer carried a bunch of white roses to mark the chosen casket. According to official documents, he circled the casket 3 times. He seemed to always slow down when he walked by the 3rd casket. After going around the caskets one more time, he stopped at the 3rd casket and slowly placed the flowers on top. He faced the casket, stood at attention, and gave a salute. To this day he believed the soul of that brave soldier was with him. An inscription was placed on that casket as it flew back to the United States. An unknown American who gave his life in the World War. More than 100,000 Americans lost their lives during World War I. 3 years after the war ended, President Warren G. Harding dedicated a monument at Arlington Cemetery to unidentifiable soldiers killed during the war. Alone, the unknown soldier lies in the narrow cell of a stone. He is continually guarded by the Army's tomb sentinels, every hour of every day, so that he and other unknowns will be remembered and honored by Americans for all time. Scrolled across the marble arch of the memorial, it reads, "We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain." The words were spoken by President Lincoln over the dead at Gettysburg. On November 11, 1921, President Harding echoed that resolve over the coffin of a soldier who died for the flag in France. Across the seas, other unknown dead are hallowed in our memories, enshrined in England at the Westminster Abbey and in France under the Arc de Triomphe. But on this day, our nation poured its heart out in pride and glory for this nameless American. His coffin was carried from the Capitol down Pennsylvania Avenue, under the shadow of the Washington Monument, the eyes of Lincoln, and thousands of Americans who came to testify their approval. There was no cheering among the crowd, but a reverent hush and pride beyond the reach of shouting. The procession ended in the amphitheater at Arlington Cemetery. Down below on a platform next to the stone vault lay wreaths brought from England's king and guarded by British soldiers. After an opening prayer, a bugle rang attention. For 2 minutes the nation stood and paused for the dead. It was high noon. No sound broke the quiet as all stood with bowed heads. President Harding stepped forward beside the coffin. These words were heard across America. "We are met today to pay the impersonal tribute. The name of him whose body lies before us took flight with his imperishable soul. We know not from when he came, only that his death marks with everlasting glory of an American dying for his country. We do not know the eminence of his birth, but we do know the glory of his death. He died for his country, and greater devotion hath no man than this. He died unquestioning, uncomplaining, with faith in his heart and hope on his lips, that his country should triumph and its civilization survive. He paused, bowed his head, and recited the Lord's Prayer. When he looked, the response came back to him among the thousands he faced. It was as if the world had stopped. There was utter silence. Foreign officers came one by one, placing their highest emblems into the casket. President Harding placed the Medal of Honor and the Distinguished Service Cross alongside the others. General Jacques of Belgium added his own touch by tearing off the breast of his own tunic, the Medal of Valor pinned there from the Belgian king, and tenderly he pinned it onto the warrior. The flag-wrapped, simple coffin was carried out to the terrace. An American Indian chief came to call upon the Great Spirit that the dead should not have died in vain, that war might end, and that peace be purchased by such blood as this. Upon the casket he laid the tribal coup stick and feathered war bonnet from his own head. Then the casket, with its weight of honors, was lowered into the crypt. High among the hills of the cemetery, the echoes of guns. A bugle lifted and played taps. A lullaby for the living soldier, but in his death a requiem. So that's my dad's story as he told me every year, and I too would like to pass it on to you, and that we will always remember our brave soldiers and our brave veterans. Thank you. Now, how do I turn this off? Here we go.